Hi everybody, this is Victoria. Welcome back to another episode of Art Tutorials. So today what we're actually going to work on together is we're going to learn how to draw realistic hair. So I have quite a bit of students that were asking about how could we actually draw realistic hair, and then hair actually comes in a lot of different types of hairstyles, so I'll probably just show you some of the basics today of how to draw hair. So we picked some different types of hairstyles from different celebrities and singers. So we have Lizzo, and then we also do have Taylor Swift, and then we also have Ariana and Ed Sheeran, but we're probably just going to work on mostly on Lizzo because she has like that nice dark hair, and then also Taylor Swift because she has a lighter hair, so you guys can kind of understand how to create a darker hairstyle and then also a lighter hair. So we're actually going to go through and see what art materials we'll need for this tutorial, and then also I'll teach you guys how to draw a realistic hair one step at a time so that you guys can kind of see how I start off and then how I would actually fill in the hatching and shading and how would I actually touch up and finish the final drawing. And for those who are completely new to this art YouTube channel, my name is Victoria and I am a self-taught fine art artist, illustrator, and I am also an art teacher that creates these fun tutorials and drawing processes and also drawing exercises and constructions to help my students and then those who loves to draw and paint improve their drawing and painting skills. So if you guys are ready, let's get started and learn how to draw realistic hair. So basically today what we're actually going to do first is that what art materials do we need? So we need paper. You can either use sketch paper or drawing paper. You can also use printing paper too, though I recommend sketch paper because we are layering a lot of shadows and shading. And the next thing what we'll need is pencils. So you can either use a traditional pencil or a mechanical pencil. Both of them work, and I would recommend having a variety of HB pencils and also having a 2B, a 4B or a 6B or 8B for anything darker. But I think so if you don't want to have all of those pencils, you can also just use an HB and a 2B for anything that we need to fill in darker. We would also need brushes to blend our shading and hatching, so I would recommend getting a synthetic watercolor brush or like any type of soft brush that would help blend the graphite that we're actually filling in with our pencil. And then the next thing is we would also need an eraser just to clean off or correct any mistakes that we made. So you can use a regular eraser. I use a Monami dust-free eraser, or you can also use a kneadable eraser too for more detailed areas. Okay, so the first drawing that we're actually going to do is Lizzo's hair. So it's going to be a dark hair kind of style. So basically we're going to be going into a lot more darker tones. We're not going to keep it very light though, but it will have a stronger contrast. So let's go ahead and start with the general shape of the hair and also just kind of dividing each part of the hair. So not the individual strands though, but each flock of hair, I guess, or just like a larger area of the hair, because you can pretty much see those pretty clearly on the picture reference. So we're gonna kind of get those out first, and then once we have that, then we can go ahead and start filling light layers. So make sure to remember to fill in light layers, because then that way we can decide whether if we want to make it even lighter and erase some of the hatching, or we can actually add more layers to make it darker. So we are starting with the first base layer for this area or this strand of hair, and then we're also adding the darker part of the underside of the hair. So as you can see on the picture reference, this part is a lot darker compared to the other part, so I am adding quite a bit more layers before I actually start doing some blending with my brushes. So usually I would actually start blending after the first base layer, or at least it has to have some layer of hatching and shading before I actually blend, or else you would be blending with literally nothing. You gotta blend something, which is the graphite. So once you have that, then you can actually fill in all the white pores, and then after that, then you can actually add a second layer just to bring back the hair texture and then also make it darker. So the key idea with blending with the brush is to fill in the white gaps in between the hatching lines, and also just kind of the gaps within the paper texture. So sometimes the pencil can't actually reach into all the little crevices and all that stuff, so the brush does a great job in blending and covering all of that up. And once you usually blend like about a few times, I usually blend the very first time because mostly it's the first base layer, and then everything else is just basically filling it in with straight hatching. So as you can see here, I'm still using my HB pencil to fill in majority of the first part of the drawing process, and until I kind of fill in the whole drawing with a base layer and I kind of see the direction of the hairline, then I would actually start adding more darker layers later on. But like right now, I'm just going to work a little bit with the HB pencil and filling in the next strand of hairs over here. And as you can see, I'm kind of working in chunks, so section per section. And usually with hair, any places that has highlights, you would probably keep those empty or those parts really light, so you can technically keep them the lighter tone of the first base layer. So that's your lightest layer, and then you would basically just add more layers on the areas that there isn't any highlight. But you'll see later on as I kind of add more of the darker shadows and all that stuff. So, and then a very common question that people do ask is, do I only draw the darker, or do I only fill in the darker shades and tones with a softer and darker pencil? Well, technically you can use an HB and add 4 to 5 or even 10 layers to make it darker, and that works too. But if you want something that's even darker, I would recommend going into either 2B or something that's even softer, so you probably go 4B, 6B, or like a 9B and all that stuff. But usually HB has a really nice range of different tones that you can create, so depending on like how much pressure you put on the pencil too though, and also how many layers. So I would prefer not too much pressure though, but just adding more layers to help that dark tone to build up. So okay, so now I'm moving over to the right side and giving that a base layer as well before I actually start doing some blending here. So here, since I am blending quite a large space, I would rather use a larger brush. You can also use a small brush though, but it's just going to take you a little bit more time to actually go through the whole hair. And then now, since I blended everything's kind of like all smushed and we don't see the individual strands very clearly anymore. So that's why I would like to go back and add a new layer of hatching so that it looks more like hair and not skin or anything, because that's how we kind of differentiate the different textures that way. So basically you want to go back and add more layers of hatching so that you actually kind of get that texture of hair strands back. So here I'm adding kind of second, third, and fourth layers, and here as you can see I'm being a little bit more specific. So when drawing hair, the few key things that are very important is basically the direction of the hair. So basically hair has a very distinct direction of how the hair strands go. So basically your line, so each line represents a hair strand, so you want to make sure that they go the same direction as the hair that's in the picture reference. And also if you want to leave lighter hair strands, for example, like I did a little bit earlier there, so I'm going to probably swap pencils now. So anytime that when you see I have the green little part on the mechanical pencil, that's my 2B mechanical pencil. So here I'm actually going in to get the darker part. So anything that I want to keep light, so lighter strands, I would actually keep it the base color because I don't want it to be just white because Lizzo has darker hair, so it's not just white. And I want to have it leave a little bit of a gray tone, so anything else I would actually have to make it darker. So you're filling in the silhouette of the lighter hair strand in order to create that effect that, okay, we have lighter strands here and then darker strands in the back. So with this, the 2B makes it all so much darker, so you're gonna see the difference. It's like day and night. So with the 2B pencil, I can actually make the tones so much darker, and then that's how we're going to build a nice contrast, and also making sure that this hair looks darker, and so that we don't mistaken this as a light hair style. And I'm also adding in the darker strands that are in between the lighter strands. So we're kind of filling in the negative shapes technically when you're creating light strands, because we don't have white pencils, at least for graphite we don't really do that. You can probably do something like that if you were doing charcoal, but most of the times when you do charcoal, you would probably use an eraser to lighten up the hair. So yeah, so basically over here what we're going to do is that we're going to kind of continue and add more layers, and as you can see, I want to kind of keep that unevenness. So the lighter areas, those parts, you want to keep it the original tone, and I'm going to be really careful to kind of shape the darker places around the lighter parts over here. And then I'm just going to gradually fill in more and more of this as I fill in the whole hair. And then just keep in mind to look at your picture reference more often, because all the secrets are in the picture reference. So basically you draw what you see. So if you're unable to see some of the slightest difference between that, then you're going to have to learn to observe and kind of take a look to see, okay, this hair I'm working on, this part is dark, and then beside it, it gets a little bit lighter. So you want to make sure you have that added to your drawing. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the end of the hair, or the tip of the hair. So with this one is very much negative shape as well. So as you can see, each hair strand is more or less pointy, correct? So basically what happens here is that you would want to make sure that you fill in the gaps in between the hair strands that are kind of separating itself at the very end. So basically you would fill those in. If it was dark and shadowed, then you would probably do that, and then you would leave the lighter strands the lighter layer. So that's how you would usually create that effect for this part of the hair. And most of the time it's just being able to kind of recreate what we see, right? Because at the end of the day, the drawing is created with a whole bunch of pencil lines, tones, and shade and shapes. So if you're able to kind of work with these tools that you have to create something that resembles hair, then that's how you actually get realistic hair. So it's a little bit tricky at first though, but once you get the hang of it, you'll be able to kind of play around with it and draw it a lot more easily. But the key idea, I think, is direction of hatching is very important, and also just being mindful of where the highlights are and where you would want to keep the lighter tones, and then just fill in any of the darker spacings and just fill it in with like a 2B or like a 4B and 6B. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for how to fill in the hair. I'll just kind of continue filling in until this whole hair is done. So this part we're actually also working a little bit at the end part, and as you can see, I'm being really careful of how I fill it in, because the end of the hair is very different for each part of the hair. So you want to be mindful to observe and just kind of see how the hair would separate at the very end, and also just kind of see whether if it's a dark tone, a middle tone, or a light tone. Here you could probably see a lot clearer of the separation of the hair strands here, so then you kind of see where each hair strand is technically the line itself. So you want to be a little bit more careful when you're actually adding these smaller details though, and just kind of be open and observant while you're filling in these parts. So it's kind of getting close to almost completed. We still have to add a few more details, but you guys can kind of take a look and kind of see how I add these smaller tweaks and all that stuff. And feel free to kind of like pause the video and replay it if you miss out on anything. And definitely feel free to ask questions if you kind of don't understand a certain part, because really it's pretty much kind of drawing what you see. And once we're done with this area, I think so we just have to add a few more tones and touch-ups for the darker areas. So now it's mostly like the darker contrast and the darker shadows and all that stuff, so we're going to add more of that. Okay, and we're going to touch up the last few bits of the hair strand over here, because I don't want to keep too many of the highlights, because since we are drawing darker hair over here, so once we're done with that, then we are good to go. So that's how we draw a realistic hair, but a dark colored hair. And then next what we're going to do here is that we're going to learn how to draw a light version of this, so light hair. So we are going to pick Taylor Swift because her hair is a little bit more uniformed, not as messy as Ed Sheeran, and a little bit lighter than Ariana. So what we're going to start with is a very light outline, kind of like what we did with the hair outline for Lizzo. So what we're going to do here is that we're going to go ahead and shape out the bangs. So that's the area that we're drawing of Taylor's hair. So we're going to go ahead and get the outline for that first, and then we're also going to kind of see how to fill in the hair. So we're going to fill in first the light layer, a very light base layer, and then after that we're going to be very gradual when we add second layers, since it is a lighter hairstyle. So what we're going to do here is that we're going to make sure that we keep our shading and hatching very light, and then gradually build that up. So let's start with the base layer. So now we're pretty much finished filling in the top part of the bangs, so now we're going to go ahead and fill in the bottom part. So as you can see, I left a empty spacing in between the bangs because that part is the highlight. So if you kind of see on the picture reference of Taylor's hair, the center part is very bright, so we're gonna keep it as light as possible since she does have a lighter hairstyle and all that stuff, so it's not going to be as dark as Lizzo's. So that way we're going to keep it the white of the paper so that we kind of keep it the lightest as possible. And then we can actually blend with our brush now, so we can kind of fill up majority of the white gaps of the paper texture, and then after that we can go back and add more hair texture by adding a second layer of hatching. So here I'm actually starting to divide the subtle differences between the hair strands. So basically when it comes to light hair, the subtle difference is very little, so you want to be very mindful and kind of take a closer look at the picture reference so that you kind of see where the lighter part is, where the darker part is, and just kind of fill in the darker parts and leave the lighter parts out as the base layer that we did the very first step. So once we have that, then you can also kind of gradually fill in a little bit of the bottom part. So most of the time with this type of hairstyle or just this type of light hair, I would actually just stick with HB. I rarely kind of move into 2Bs. Sometimes if there are certain areas that are a little bit darker, then I would actually go into something that's like a darker and softer pencil, so like a 2B, but like anything darker than that, I don't think we really need it. So we're going to mostly stick with HB. You can actually go with something lighter too, so you do have the option to use any of the H pencils if that's easier for you. So nobody says that you only have to or you can only use HB, right? You can always use H's if you tend to have a harder time controlling how much pressure you put on the pencil to keep it light consistently, then I would recommend getting a H pencil. So you could probably get a 2H, a 4H. I think that should be good enough. And then anything else that you want darker, then you can use an HB. Now we're mostly adding second layers and just darker gray tones at the bottom, and then we're also closing in on the middle part. So this is probably the most trickiest part when it comes to drawing hair, is to actually be able to fill in the places where there's highlights. So the tricky thing about this is that you literally have to kind of create these like mini triangles, I guess, in a way, because you're using a lot of negative shape to create the lighter tones and highlights. So basically you want to make sure that you have a bottom up movement for any of the hatching at the bottom of the hair, and then a top to bottom direction of hatching for the top part of the hair. So once that closes in the center, then you would have like this zigzag version of the highlights in between, and then that would actually recreate that illusion of highlight on a silky smooth hair. And also don't forget that you can actually slow down the pace when you're filling in the hatching. So nobody says that you have to go really, really quick when filling in the hatching. You can actually go a little bit slower, so then that way you have a lot more precision on where you're actually filling in and where you want to be a little bit more cautious, because you don't want just to by accidentally fill in the place that you're supposed to leave blank. So we're going to go really gradual, and then with this hair, since it's so light, we're going to go very minimal with adding darker tones and layers, and then feel free to blend a little bit if you need to, but I would probably blend a little bit. Don't blend too much, because if you over blend, then everything's going to turn to mush pretty much, so you won't see anything. It's going to be really blurry and you don't see the individual hair strands anymore. So you want to make sure that you kind of keep the blending at a moderate amount. And once we're done with that, we're probably gonna do a little bit more tweaking as we add. So make sure you look at the picture reference to kind of see where you could add more hatching, and then where you would probably want to stop, because it's already good enough since we are drawing lighter hairs. And yeah. Here I'm starting to separate a little bit of the separate hair strands at the bottom, so it's going to be a very similar method that we did earlier. So you want to make sure that you kind of have more spacing in between, and then anything you want to leave blank, then you would just leave that spacing out, and then anything else that you have to fill in, then you just fill it in with hatching. And then once we're done with that, I'm probably going to do some small fixes on the side over here, and then eventually I would go up a little bit because I want to add a little bit of the top of the bangs, because that one didn't quite fill in all the way to the very top, so we're going to actually do that in a second. So here what we're actually going to do here is that we're going to have to make sure that we patch up the hatching together, since we do have a smaller part left to fill in, and we didn't do that at the very beginning though, but this part kind of curves in a different way. So it's curving from top to bottom and kind of more or less from the center, so basically you want to make sure that they more or less all start kind of at that the root of the hair basically, and then we're going to have it so that it kind of curves downwards and it connects with the rest of the hatching and strands of hair that we have from our first layer. And we would do something similar to the left side as well, so making sure that it starts from the roots, from the center part, and it curves out and downwards. So once we have this, we'll probably add just a few more layers so that it matches with the layering that we have for the bottom part of the hair. So then that way we have something that connects the tones a lot better. And just after a few more touch-ups, then we shall be finished with this new hair drawing tutorial. And then now we kind of learn how to draw a realistic hair with the dark hair version, and also with a lighter colored hair version as well. So I hope this video was helpful for you guys, and make sure to keep the tips and advice that I mentioned in this video to help you out while you're drawing this realistic hair that you're working on. So then that way you would have a better balance of where to add darker tones, where to keep it blank, and then places that you want to kind of adjust and find the perfect balance so that you can get the perfect tone, perfect shape, and also perfect placement of what you're filling in with the hatching. Thank you again so much for watching this brand new art tutorial video, and I hope this was helpful for you guys. And if you'd like to see more videos like these in the future, please make sure to subscribe. Please also make sure to press the like button if you like this brand new video, and also please make sure to comment if you have any questions about this tutorial, or if you have any questions about future tutorials, or anything that you would like to learn on how to draw realistically. Oh, also, if you're interested, I also do have more drawing exercises and drawing practices on my Patreon, so you can get a whole bunch of different drawing practices there. They're very helpful. They come in these step-by-step methods, and then also there's instructions on them, so they're very easy to understand. So you can actually sign up to my Patreon. There's 2 tiers that you can sign up to. You can either sign up to Student Fuzz tier, or you can also sign up to Learning Fuzz tier. They both have the construction. It's just that the Student Fuzz tier, you can get more feedback on specific areas, so you can feel free to ask questions, and also you would get a one-on-one online drawing lesson too, so then that way we can actually head on to Zoom and have a chat, and I can kind of take a look at your drawing and kind of give you some tips and advice and some feedback on where you can improve a little bit better with your drawing practice. And there's like plenty more other drawing exercises on there. There's coloring pages, there's hatching practices, there's drawing construction, and I'm just kind of keeping it updated and kind of uploading more different drawing exercises and also painting exercises in the future, just to kind of help you improve your drawing and painting skill. Okay, and that's it for today. So I hope you guys enjoyed this brand new art tutorial video on how to draw realistic hair, and stay tuned for the upcoming video coming out next week. But wishing you guys a happy practice, stay creative, have fun time exploring and trying out new methods and techniques, and just explore, enjoying the drawing process. Okay, I'll see you guys next week. Take care, have a wonderful week, have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you on Friday. Okay, have a wonderful day. Bye!